Sinners and saints, dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alec After Dark.
Brave faces, sinners and saints. I am struggling once again with my allergies. This has been the longest pre-spring and spring seasons that I can remember of struggling this much with my allergies. It's just been a really challenging year for them. I'm thinking maybe this is some sort of effect of climate change. You never know. We're going to get through this episode. I hope I don't cough and crack too much, but pretend I'm sucking a dick or something. That'll make it more fun, right?
What? Damn.
One of the things that came to mind this week was the notion of being in the closet. And as we've talked about the past few weeks about being judged and rumors and gossip, I was thinking about how does that all really come into play? And one of the things that I've always found interesting is how that if you don't provide the information about yourself, it seems like people will just kind of fill in the blanks. If you are a person who is gay, who is in the closet, you have every right to be in the closet if you so choose to be. But I do think that the more mysterious that we are about ourselves, the more likely people will come to conclusions about us that are rarely accurate, mostly trivial, but are a factor in our everyday lives. Isn't it interesting how people treat you based on what they perceive that they know about you? You know, I discussed this before with Chase, the guy that I was head over heels in love with, that he hated himself so much that he couldn't appreciate that I loved him. I was loving this thing that he despised. So there had to be something wrong with me, because if I really understood who he was, there would be no way in his mind that I could love him. He never took into consideration that maybe I was seeing him for who he truly was. Now, I don't know that I'm correct on that, because if we were seeing eye to eye, I feel that we could have worked out our relationship, and we didn't, of course. I remember once when I was working in the small town before I moved to the big city, that little company, that when I interviewed with, I believe I called him Mark, I did not know that he had picked up that I was gay from the beginning. I actually asked him at one point, how did you know? And he just said, I just knew. And I still don't buy that exactly. And I kept thinking that I was giving off some kind of vibe or something. But his perception of me was that I was gay. And he told me that before he hired me, he asked the bosses if they had a problem with hiring me. And I'm like, wow. So even then, well, at that time, it still was a factor in you getting a job or you renting an apartment, you know, just the everyday functions of life. And I wonder, for heterosexual people who have all these preconceived notions of gay people, what do you think that we do? I guess, do you think that we're just bonking all the time, that we're having orgies, that all we think about is sex? Which I guess that's ironic coming from me, because I guess it does seem like I think about sex a lot. But guess what? Everybody thinks about sex a lot. We just don't really want to admit that. Not that it's even necessary to function in the real world. I wonder, like these Bible beaters in particular, I really do believe that when they attack gay people, I think it does partially come from jealousy. They are envious of what they perceive our life is like. If only they knew or took the time to get to know gay people, they'd see that really our life is no different than anybody else's. We have to survive. We need food. We need clothing. We need shelter. We need all the things that anyone else needs. We fight and argue, and we love and we hate, and we have our favorite musicians. We have our favorite movies, our favorite books. We just kind of wish that we were more represented in the mainstream media. And I know people just rolled their eyes at that because it does seem like everywhere you turn on almost any show, there's at least one gay character. But are they really showing the real life of a gay person? It almost feels like there has to be a stereotypical gay person to not make the mainstream uncomfortable, the heterosexuals who don't want to believe that there are very many gay people, which there are, by the way. They just want to have this belief. But I guess that's part of the problem, too. I remember the right wing complaining that they had lost the culture war when it came to the gay community when Will and Grace was on TV, when it ran for so many seasons and they couldn't put a stop to it. That put gay characters on a highly rated show into the limelight. It showed the world that gay people in a sitcom had the same kind of problems that anybody else did, that you really do have to function in life. That's the process, though, isn't it? Is that the more we're exposed and revealed to be just your average people, it takes away that ability for them to demonize people. That's why now transgender people are the most targeted by the right wing. It's because they are mysterious. There's confusion on their side because they have not allowed themselves to get to know someone who is transgender. But as a transgender person, you shouldn't have to feel the obligation to educate the whole world every damn day of your life. Because at the end of the day, you really just want to live your life in peace, without threats and without the fear of being attacked at any time by some idiot who doesn't bother to get to know a person. But it also cracks me up to think that everyone would believe that every gay person is nice. My God, there's so many assholes in any orientation. I don't know where that comes from. That the assumption would be because there are gays that are catty, that are bitchy, that are assholes. And I'll be honest, I fall into every one of those categories on certain days. And part of that is probably a chip on my shoulder because gay men in particular are viewed by a lot of people as weak and a pushover. You have to come off as being tougher and stronger than most other people. I mean, it's that whole macho, masculine versus feminine identity thing, which is really, if you think about it, that's just bullshit. I remember people talking about how, well, in descriptions, like on the earlier hookup apps and in the, what was it called? That, Lord have mercy, I think it's still around, but what's it called that you used to could look up online and there would be ads for people looking for certain things? What was that called? Craigslist, that's what it was called. And they would be descriptions like, masculine man seeks other masculine man, blah, 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 blah. And you start thinking about that. And I remember in the good old days, the AOL chat rooms, and there were gay chat rooms, and there was a heated discussion one night about masculinity and femininity. And to me, they're learned behaviors. And I got absolutely shellacked by people saying, no, I've always been this way. And I was raised by women and I am just naturally a masculine man. And then you ask them, okay, so what makes a man masculine? And to hear them go through what makes a man masculine just will crack you up sometimes. I think it's all learned. I think we see like a John Wayne or a Hugh Jackman, and they are presenting themselves in a role that's considered like a cowboy or a macho avenger or whatever, an X-Men. And we see that and we think that that's how we should act, right? I mean, isn't that like an imitation of somebody else? I mean, I think we are naturally behaving certain ways, but sexual orientation is what it is. It is, you're born that way, but masculinity and femininity are behaviors. I guess I wonder, because there'll be girls that were called tomboys as they were growing up. Did they all turn out to be lesbians? No, not by any means. I think that we've allowed ourselves to create these roles, these stereotypes of what a man is and what a woman is. And I just really wonder why they make such a big deal of this stuff. I mean, the idea is to demonize transgender people, but when I hear somebody say, oh, well, the woke people can't define what a woman is, well, you ask them to define what a woman is. And I got into this conversation once with someone, and they said, a woman is someone that can have a baby. Then I said, so after they go through menopause, are they no longer a woman? And they get a little bit confused. And I'm like, so what are they then? So if the only definition of a woman is that they can give birth, all those that can't give birth aren't women? And of course, they'll start hee-hawing and double talking and stuff like that, because they just want to make it this black and white issue, and it never is. None of these things are so easily defined. Yes, you have male and female, but there are people that are born with genitalia that can be both. And I remember seeing a documentary about families that have that happen, how they keep it in the closet. They will tell the parents that this has happened. Your child has basically both male and female physical characteristics. And they say, well, when we examine them, they have more male or more female characteristics. So you should decide to choose making them female, raising them as female. And I found that very interesting, how there was one case where she was raised as a girl and she was very confused starting in her teen years, where she finally sat down with her parents and said, I feel like I'm a boy. Everything about me feels like I'm a boy. And they confessed to her that she was born with both organs and they had to make a decision. And they admitted that they must have made the wrong decision, and they helped her transition to him. I don't think that the ones who try to pigeonhole these issues ever think about why the issue evolved in the first place. And getting into this complex of a topic on a podcast where I'm just expressing my opinion probably isn't the best thing in the world to do, but I have a right to my opinion. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, just that I find it very interesting that all of us want to simplify a problem and turn it in a way that suits our opinion. If someone can present me with evidence and convincing information, I am by all means still willing to adapt my thinking and adjust it accordingly. But don't be just throwing stuff out as if it's fact when you don't have a clue what you're really talking about. As I said at the beginning of this episode, all of this stems from what people perceive in us, what they believe we are, without even bothering to even ask us, perhaps. When we don't fill in those gaps, people will fill in the gaps for you. But does that matter? I don't know. I think that's up to each person and their own way of thinking about their life. Maybe that's why I'm doing this podcast. Maybe I'm putting all this out there so that nobody else can. Trust me, if I think I'm being very open with my sexuality, my sexual encounters, my partners, while protecting them still, I'm definitely not doing a kiss and tell here. This isn't Wendy Williams. This isn't Jerry Springer, even though I think a lot of people that are listening want it to be. I do like being able to think out loud and know that I am responsible for everything that I say. I guess that's the flip side of that too. We see it happen every day where somebody says something that they meant in a certain way, but then it's convoluted to be used as an attack line against you. That would be something that I will hate, and eventually it's going to happen to me. Those of you who know me know that my intentions are good. I am not trying to attack anybody except for, well, the orange turd and those supporters that are so like Nazis that we have to defend ourselves against them and try to save this country from that mindset. Maybe that's the way we do it. Maybe if people are more open and able to articulate what it's like to be a gay person, a transgender person, a woman, a man, even a heterosexual, even though most heterosexuals have had their life shown on TV and movies since the beginning of time, since the beginning of movies and television. You've always been a witness to it. And I wonder too, there are shows that we've watched and movies we've seen throughout our life where I think that we've wanted to live within that plot, within those parameters of the movie or the television series. I mean, I think all of us would have loved to have been part of the Golden Girls, but if you get down to the nitty-gritty of the show, they had terrible fights. They struggled financially. They had all kinds of problems, but turning those problems into humor was what made the show so good. In the real world, a leaky roof or plumbing problems isn't so much fun that you can get a laugh out of it. We always look back on things like that and get a laugh, but at the time, it's a disaster. It's a financial burden. It's a problem. It's a headache. And you have to deal with it in a way that you can't handle on a sitcom. Isn't that funny to think about that? How we fall in love with these shows and with the image that they portray, that we would want to exist within that show, not really thinking about all the things you don't really see, I think that's a very sobering thing to think about, but that's why we watch television. That's why we watch the movies and listen to music. It's an escape. It is fantasy to a degree, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you remember Madonna's documentary called Truth or Dare, there's the scene where she's being filmed. Her doctor is checking out her throat that she's having problems with. And he asks her, do you want to talk about this off camera? And she says no. And Warren Beatty is there. He was dating Madonna at the time. And Warren Beatty laughs out loud. And Warren Beatty says, she doesn't want to live off camera. And that sounded funny at the time. But you know what? The truth is that even in that documentary, which showed a lot of the things that happened behind the scenes, you really don't get to know Madonna in that documentary. You see what she allowed to be seen. It's like I was talking about a few weeks ago about the so-called reality TV. And MTV was one of the first with The Real World, which I think is still on even now. They really tried to make it about people living together and trying to make it work. But they had an editor. They didn't just show it unabridged. It was right there, controlled, so that they could direct and create storylines to make people interested in watching. So it wasn't real. It was still a TV show. Maybe that's what we're all doing ourselves. Maybe that's our personas. We provide what we want to provide to the world about ourselves and hope that those that are making up stuff about us make up things that are positive and not turning us all into serial killers. So having said all that random stuff right there about perception and assumption, I want to challenge the straight guys that are listening. Let's let you pretend to be gay and see how you can handle the day-to-day issues that pop up that you would have as a straight guy, but doing it as a gay guy. Now, you might say, well, why don't you do the same thing? Well, honey, let me just say this. When you're in the closet, you're playing the straight guy that whole time. I already know what you go through as a straight guy. So maybe give me the benefit of the doubt and you try something a little different. Maybe if you walked in my shoes, you would see that gay men, lesbian women are total badasses who know how to survive and know how to fight and work it like nobody else's business. Chicky, chicky, bang, bang, rah, rah, rah. Thank you for joining me for Alan After Dark. I hope you've had fun. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you're holding your head up high and letting your freak flag fly. Remember, take life by the balls and be real. We'll see you soon. Thank you.